Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here. Hope you're happy, healthy and well. It is time for a new book review today. I have the pleasure of reviewing and sharing my life lessons of Julian Barnes' new novel called Elizabeth Finch, a novel. It was published last year in 2022 and I must admit, look at this cover, isn't it brilliant? It's got holes in the paper and I think it is meant to signify holes in an argument. That's my interpretation. Now, why did I read this book? On Thursday night, I went to the library just before Good Friday and just before all the holidays, and I borrowed a whole stack of books that I was going to read over the Easter break. My intention was simply just to sit in bed and read from morning till night. I managed to get through 4 novels. This book was read on Easter Sunday, which in hindsight I thought was quite fitting for the theme of the book. Now, when I saw the book in the library, it was on the recent books, and when you see the name Julian Barnes, you just borrow it simply because Julian Barnes is a well-known author, prolific author, and has written many excellent books over the years, and one of which I have reviewed recently on this channel, which I loved, and it was his first book called Metroland. And if you're interested in any of Julian Barnes' novels or interested in the review that I shared of that as well, just do a search on this channel and you'll find it. This one though was a little bit different to previous books that I have read. It's, in a way, it's a bit hard to explain. I'm trying and grapple with how I felt about this book. I thought it was a love story, but not the love as in romantic love. I think it's more like a platonic love between a student and his lecturer. Now, Elizabeth Finch, who was she? She was a gem of a lecturer. The first part is all about her, and we're introduced to Elizabeth Finch, someone who I wish I had more Elizabeth Finches in my life. I want to be Elizabeth Finch, because when I read the first page, that really encapsulated exactly her style and exactly what she wore and how she presented herself to her students and what she thought about learning and what she thought about the world in general, that I thought to myself, my God, I want to be Elizabeth Finch. I need to be Elizabeth Finch. We all need to be Elizabeth Finch. But I know that maybe some of the Christian fundamentalists out there might take an issue with this book, but I'm a bit opaque with that. So let me read you the first page, because the first page was something that sucked me into this book straight away. And I thought, I'm going to love this book, simply because I thought it was going to be mainly about Elizabeth Finch. It's mainly about her ideas, which is okay. I would have wanted more about Elizabeth Finch, and it puts you in the picture as to what she's like. And when I read this, I had to take a photo of her and send it to a friend of mine who loves learning, who loves being in university, who loves studying, who loves the academic world, whereas I hate it. I wouldn't go back to university. To me, university is death by 1,000 cuts. But if I had a lecturer like Elizabeth Finch, I'd be back there in a heartbeat. She stood before us without notes, books or nerves. The lectern was occupied by a handbag. She looked around, smiled, was still and began. You will have observed that the title of this course is Culture and Civilization. Do not be alarmed. I shall not be pelting you with pie charts. I shall not attempt to stuff you with facts as a goose is stuffed with corn. This would only lead to an engorged liver, which would be unhealthy. Next week, I shall supply you with a reading list, which is entirely optional. Who does that? A lecturer who does that? Anyway, you will neither lose marks for ignoring it, nor gain them by relentless study. I shall teach you as adults that you undoubtedly are. The best form of education, as the Greeks knew, is collaborative. But I am no Socrates, and you are not a classroom of Plato's, if that is the correct plural form. Nonetheless, we shall engage in dialogue at the same time, and since you are no longer in primary school, I shall not dispense milksop encouragement and bland approval. For some of you, I may not well be the best teacher in the sense that one most suited to your temperament and cast of mind. I mention this in advance to those for whom it will be the case. Naturally, I hope you'll find the course interesting and indeed fun, rigorous fun that is. The terms are not incompatible and I shall expect rigour from you in return. Winging it will not suit. My name is Elizabeth Finch. Thank you. And this is where I fell in love with Elizabeth Finch. I took a photo, sent it to my friend, and I said, this is how lecturers must be. And to top it off, she's also a smoker. Okay, sorry for those of you who are going to get up in arms about it. For someone like Elizabeth Finch and the smoking the cigarette, it's kind of like a big stuff you. I'm doing the finger here right at the bottom. Stuff you to society. She thinks differently. She doesn't care about I guess, ideals and expectations. She leads her own life. And so part one is all about Elizabeth Finch, and I love part one simply because I wanted to know more about her. Now, Neil, the protagonist, is one of the mature age students who's got problems of his own with his family, twice divorced, 3 kids with different mothers. But he's got, I guess, a type of love with Elizabeth that he's in awe of her. I would say he's in love with her, but it's not kind of like that romantic sexual love. He really wants to know more about her, and he gets to know more about her by having these lunches where they exchange information and ideas and converse, and he loves that. Now, something happens in part one though that takes us to part two, which goes on a completely different tangent. This is where he gets given the notebooks of Elizabeth Finch. I'm hoping I'm not giving anything away here. And he writes a big long essay on Elizabeth Finch's romantic historical crush, which was on Julian, one of the Roman emperors who wanted to stamp out Christianity. And in this second part is all about Julian the emperor. And I would say that it's written more like not a novel, although there are elements where Neil, the protagonist, puts in his own, I guess, commentary. But overall, the part two is written in a way of, and I think there's an academic term for it, don't quote me on it, it's like a paper review where all the different papers about Julian, all the authors over over history, all share some of their own, I guess, thinking and information about what this Roman emperor did and what his intentions were for stamping out Christianity, in preference for polytheism, so the following multiple gods, and in particular the Greek and Roman gods. Now, I kind of felt sorry for Neil because to him all this was new. I mean, if I was a character in the book, I would have just invited Neil over to our place on a Sunday afternoon for a Sunday roast lunch, because this is the stuff that we talk about. This is the stuff that we say, that what would have happened if Christianity didn't go down the track that we see today? What if we still revered the gods, and in some amusing way at our place we still follow, not that we do it amusingly about the gods. We wouldn't have had wars, we wouldn't need to have a renaissance, we wouldn't have had the Enlightenment, simply because people would already have gone through this, and Christianity, and even he lays into Judaism as well, really, obviously slaughtered lots of people. They slaughtered amongst themselves, and really, what did it add over time? So I know this book is probably going to be a bit iffy for some people to read, but for me reading it, I didn't know about Julian. I had read the poems by Cavafy. I read them in Greek because I'm a Greek background and kind of knew it, but I didn't know the real history and the story of Julian. And so part two was actually a very interesting lesson for me. In the third part of this book, the protagonist wants to wrap up his project, although he knows he's the king of unfinished projects. But he decides then to go down a different track, and that is to get in contact with his previous classmates and ask them their opinion of Elizabeth Finch. And in so doing, he gets their opinion, and they all have different opinions, obviously. And that's when he starts to realize that history is, I guess, different perspectives from different people. Everyone has their own opinion of what has happened, and he was way too close to Elizabeth to kind of see it for what it is, just like Elizabeth was too close to her study with Julian. But she didn't get anywhere with it, and neither did Neil with the project in this book. So in a way, he kind of left it, and he just let life play out. And in some way, I think that is what the story is with regards to what happened with Julian and Christianity. When Julian died, Christianity came to the fore, and it just flowed. Maybe this is what it is meant to be. History is happening all around us. We're in it. We've got our own version of events. We've got our own perspectives of what's happening. But it just is. It just is. I don't think one person plays a big part of it. You are just kind of like a part of something, and we all play our own respective parts in it, although it's not up to one particular man to change the course of history. And this particular theme is really interesting now that I'm talking about it, because it's very relevant to also Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace, which is exactly what Tolstoy was writing about. And he actually looked at it, the fact that it's not one person who changes the course of history. We are all part of the history, and we all have a part to play, and we all have our perspectives in it. So in some way, that is, I guess, the life lesson and the alignment to what Tolstoy was writing as well. So I think this book, though, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Some people might love it. Some people might not like it, simply because of the second part and how it's written. However, if you stick with the second part, it's actually quite interesting, because you can start to research and go down a little rabbit warren and look at the different references that he puts in this book and read something for yourself and make your own judgment. I went back to the Cavafy poems and read them, and it was really interesting. Especially from someone who comes from a Greek background with the Greek Orthodox. Some of the stories we had heard about, but I just kind of didn't register, especially as someone who, I'm not really into religion. Should I say that? I think I'm going to get slammed. So look, I'll leave it at that. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. That is it for now. If you have read this book, let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are. Bye for now.